Chapter 6 The General and the Demigod. Landon Rosser stood tall, holding his rudimentary wooden staff in front of him with both hands. He gazed at the 9 dead bodies of his men and the 1 dead body of a saber cat. The former general to King Gideon Brock backed up slowly and watched as the remaining saber cat stalked him slowly in the twilight. The barren wasteland was an almost lifeless island, mostly covered by volcanic rock. The land had little vegetation, barely any water, and only a few small animals and reptiles that could withstand its habitat. It had been about a year now since Rosser and his men had been exiled to the hellish landscape, but they could have been dead if King Brock had willed it. Luckily Brock, along with Dwarf King Dormer Ironhearth, had spared their lives after finally ending his attempt to take Brock's throne. Still, thought Rosser, this life is not much better than death. Actually, it could be worse, he laughed sarcastically. The water was becoming more hard to find, and even though they still had numbers on their side, the saber cats, as few as they were, still ruled the large island, and both his men and the goblins that had allied with him knew it. Landon Rosser looked over at the young saber cat. The fight was now just between the two of them. Rosser looked over his shoulder and saw the rickety bridge that had looked too old and feeble for him and his men to cross. The bridge necessary to take them further into the island than they had ever been, in search of food and water. However, the saber cats had gotten to them right before they could cross, as dangerous as it would have been. But now, thought Rosser, the bridge may be able to just hold him, if he could get to it. Rosser started to back up faster to the wood and rope bridge, while the saber cat eyed him, licking his chops. A warrior for most of his life, the big man had been in many battles. Many fights, both physical and mental, and against all odds. However, the saber cat well outweighed him, and his fangs were as large and sharp as daggers, its other teeth as small and precise as arrowheads. His brown, furry hide was thick. Rosser leaned back and grabbed one of the wooden poles that helped stabilize the long, narrow bridge, the bridge that held his only escape. Suddenly, the saber cat lunged forward, and upon landing in front of its prey, swung its huge paw. Rosser lifted his staff and was barely able to defend himself. Even worse, the top of his staff broke off and flew down into the darkness of the giant chasm that the bridge swayed over. Rosser looked down into the blackness and waited to hear the wood hit the bottom, but the sound never came. Slowly, Rosser walked onto the first few wooden planks of the ancient bridge, lacing his left arm around the rope handle, and his right arm lifted with the remaining half of his staff pointed at the animal that, like him, just wanted to survive the barren wasteland. Rosser continued backing slowly on the bridge, stepping over a few holes where the wood had broken off over the years. Then he watched as the saber cat placed his front paw on the first plank of the bridge. Rosser turned and looked far off to where the bridge ended. Hope all but left him, and he sighed. There was no way he would come out of this alive if the saber cat took to the bridge with him. With the weight of them both, the old bridge wouldn't be able to hold them, and if he made a dash, it would surely collapse from the stress. Stepping forward, Rosser swung his broken staff at the large predator. Surprised, the saber cat reared up. Then the big man yelled, raising both arms high. "Back! Back!" Rosser screamed as he swung his broken staff wildly. The saber cat, composed again, roared back as the staff came within inches of its face. The mighty beast swung its right paw at Landon and knocked the man's only weapon from his hands down into the chasm. Then he swung his left paw for the kill, but Rosser leapt back and evaded the strike. However, though the saber cat's paw missed its prey, it sliced through the fraying rope that held the bridge aloft. Landon Rosser gasped, then he screamed as he fell from the bridge and down into the total darkness.